did read that one too.
We can, it's just us, so we can talk about that too.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about all three.
All right, you're going to have to really lead how Darwinism dumbs us down, evolution and postmodernism. Randy, I just have a hard time with some of that. And I haven't read it in a few days.
You want to start with that one?
Yeah, because you're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I might do it a little different today too. I'm gonna go through it, like paragraph by paragraph.
Okay, I'm up
and I'm
for
more
that.
in depth, just because it's just us. And
Okay.
that one was more tough for sure.
It was very hard for me. I read it, but it was very.
Yeah, I wish John was here for this one.
Do what?
I wish John was here for this one as well. There's a lot of philosophical stuff in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know what I did with it. One day I went through all my books. I had Darwin's Black Box and I looked for it.
Oh, yeah?
So I did have it at one time.
Yeah.
I'd gone to some intelligent design seminar, bought tons of stuff. Behe's.
Oh yeah?
Some of his stuff. But did I read them all? No.
Yeah. Eventually. Need more time in the day. So many books I want to finish. Alright, so how Darwinism dumbs us down.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's talking about his experience. There were some picketers right at Stanford University. They were picketing him in the school because they had some proponents of intelligent design.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have any questions on intelligent design, right?
Well, my understanding of intelligent design is it's not necessarily a Christian
right.
Theology, so to speak,
Yep.
but it tends to support creationism because it says something was there with that Big Bang, something initiated it, something was there, but they don't know what that is. They don't call it our Christian God, but don't they call it maybe a God? What do they call that initial?
Well, a designer. Some intelligence.
A designer.
Yeah. It could be God. I believe it's God.
Mm-hmm.
It could definitely be a God. But it's some kind of designer. Because what we see is intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
So they're picketing that.
Okay.
And so I like what as he starts talking, they start to soften their hostility and actually engage. Because the gist of his talk is that Darwinism undercuts the very possibility of rational truth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an argument that seems unsettling to atheist students who had organized a group specifically to promote rational thought. So I guess we could start with there's the kind of the idea of there's thought and then morals. There's some similarity with the morals. Like, where do morals come from? Are they subjective, just based off the culture? They don't actually have a transcendent, something outside of us that actually makes them true. So are they actually true, or are they not true? I think we had one of our other chapters talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that concept make sense?
Yeah, because if it's just by culture, then culture by culture, different cultures around the world, they could say it's all right to have adultery, and somebody else could say it's all right to murder. So we're saying that morals came from an original source. We're saying it came from God.
Yeah, something outside of us.
Something outside of us, because it's universal.
Right. And so with morals, that same thought process can be applied to any kind of truth whatsoever. So if I say, this is a white book, is that true, or is it just true because I said it's true?
What did you say? What kind of book?
White.
Oh, white. Okay.
It's what is truth. So the big topic in this chapter is believers and people, proponents of intelligent design, and are saying that truth is outside. There's something outside of us, that there's an ultimate truth. Truth isn't something that we just make up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not truth. It's self-defeating. If everybody just has their own truths, then you delve into the realm of relativism, where everybody has their own truths.
And that's what relativism is everybody has what's right for them.
Right.
Okay. I wasn't really sure what they meant when it undercuts rational truth. What rational truth?
So there's, so he talks about naturalism down there at the bottom of that first page.
Okay.
And then on the top of the second page, it says they began applying a naturalistic worldview across the board: philosophy, psychology, the law, education, and the arts. So naturalism, and there's different types of naturalism, but what they're talking about is methodological naturalism. So there's, and I'll just give you both. So one is everything, every process, everything on Earth and life and science, everything can be explained, or has to be explained, by another naturalistic process with naturalistic means.
What does that mean? Like, what would be?
So if they were trying to, we'll use evolution for example. They say we evolved, life began. They kind of put it in a box and limit them what they can think about. So it can't be a creator, a god, anything else. It has to be some kind of natural process.
Okay.
Laws of gravity or laws of nature, something. So they're not allowed to think about anything else at all. It has to be. So that's materialistic naturalism. And they have another one. I wish I had my other book. I was reading another book. They were talking about it. It's called. I forget. The other one is they actively dismiss or say that anything supernatural, transcendent, just doesn't exist. So the first one we talked about just now, that they're not denying it, but they can't use any means or methods to try and explain whatever it is they're trying to test in science or explain, or philosophy, or it has to be a naturalistic explanation.
That's materialistic and or
Methodological.
Methodological. Okay. So they might acknowledge that there's something supernatural, but they wouldn't use it in their argument.
Or they're testing.
Okay.
Or in their science, every explanation has to be something in a natural means or methods.
What do you think would be something supernatural?
Supernatural would be anything, and we have this thought of supernatural as miracles and powers, but if you just look at the word, it's supernatural, supernatural, supernature, something that's normally outside the realm of what nature can do.
A miracle.
So a miracle would be one of those. And so that's probably the best kind of explanation of phenomena that's not explained by nature, often called miracles. That would be an example of that. Something outside the realms of that nature can explain, like physics and any of that. So if, like, intelligent design, for example, the laws of nature, anything in nature, they're using that to try and explain that nature created itself, basically.
That's where evolution, where they say that lightning bolt hit that right amount of mud, or
Oh yeah, it's so funny now, after having, learned and done all this different research and going back and watching those videos where they talk about evolution and early life and what they actually, the words they say. It's like, oh well, this must have happened, and then the chances of this, and it's just the adjectives and the words they use are describing like a miracle. It just happened to happen that way, or we don't know how this happened, but eventually it just got here. And it's like, you sound like a believer, but I don't know. I have to show you one of the videos I watched last week for the air and oxygen and UV light.
oh, I wish I would have seen that.
And I brought my laptop. We can watch it, or parts of it. And they're just talking about the cells, and they're like, at some point, it just started making oxygen. That's their scientific explanation. And then that cell just, at some point, just swallowed up another cell and absorbed all of its features, and they work symbiotically together to have cells and this and that. And then that cell swallowed another cell and absorbed all its stuff. It's like that's not how that works. If I eat a cow, that doesn't mean I get a cow's stuff. And there's so many different things within the cell itself, and the different systems and different information to even build the cell, and the DNA within it. It swallowed a cell, took the DNA from that cell, melded it with its own DNA, like that.
Really,
they don't even
that's what
talk
they're
about.
saying?
Well, they imply that when they say that this cell swallowed another cell, but then they don't talk anything more about it in depth. They're just like, yeah, it just swallowed it and absorbed it, and it got its features. That's it.
I have to watch that. What video, or where would I find that, Randy?
That was, where is my phone? Oh, I'm recording with it. It's right there. Take it. I'll get it when we're done recording. It was a PBS on early cells, and I think this one was about oxygenation.
Eventually, I will watch all of these. Okay.
But all that to say, materialistic naturalism, basically, broad, super term, nature made nature. Nature had to have made nature, which it's a goofy concept. But really, that's what they're saying. They have to explain everything with naturalistic means and methods, then. But that's, they're putting themselves in a box. They're not even allowed to think about a designer or God, something intelligent. And so and so what the rest of this talks about is that affects their entire worldview and how they see in the world in every aspect, not just science, but philosophy and arts, everything.
Okay.
So let's keep going.
So for art, how would they look at inspiration? Would inspiration be natural then? like when you're inspired to paint something, you're inspired to sculpture something, how would they look at inspiration?
So if we're going off this kind of the topic in here,
Yeah, when they talk about how it affects law, education, and the arts.
so they're saying thoughts, ideas and thoughts are just tools.
Okay,
They're just useful means of getting things done.
okay.
There's no actual truth to them. They evolve. So then you have one thought, and then evolves, gets to another thought. But there's not sure. It's just a tool.
Okay.
So at the foundation of these efforts, however, was a naturalistic approach to knowledge itself. So epistemology is the study of knowledge. The logic went like this: if humans are products of Darwinian natural selection, that obviously includes the human brain, which in turn means all of our beliefs and values are products of evolutionary forces. Ideas arise in the human brain by chance, just like Darwin's chance variations in nature, and the ones that stick around to become firm beliefs and convictions are those that give an advantage for struggle for survival. This view of knowledge came to be called pragmatism, or instrumentalism. So it's if there's no God, no creator, no anything transcendent outside of us, and we're all there is, and we're just products, accidents of evolution and nature, then also our brains and our thoughts and everything that happens is just by chance. There wasn't anything that designed it, and so then they didn't talk about it, but that raises kind of the next question. Another idea is, how can you even trust your own thoughts?
Oh, you mean like, are my thoughts your thoughts?
Or my thoughts, how do I know what I'm thinking is accurate? Or am I even thinking? Because, and they'll talk about it, they'll go into it next, is all throughout time, we think of our thoughts and morals and our minds all being from God, and it's I should just find it and read it, but it's outside of ourselves, so we can trust that our minds are accurate because we believe a creator made them. Whereas in Darwinian, it's just a product of evolution, just by chance, just a variation.
So pragmatism is truth is what works. I wasn't sure, Randy, exactly what I know we just discussed it just now, but see, this is why this is hard for me. It doesn't really stick with me real well. So we're saying the ideas in our mind are just my ideas that came about through evolution. And pragmatism says the thoughts that work, the thoughts that have an advantage is what pragmatism is? Or no?
So yeah, there's partially yes. So when they say truth is what works, it's kind of like the survival of the fittest. The best one worked and that stayed.
Okay.
And so when they say truth is what works, well, you have to, what does truth mean to them? For pragmatists and people who believe in Darwinian evolution and that whole line of thought, if they're being honest, there's no absolute truth. So truth is something that just, and they're kind of explaining it there. Truth is, that could be a definition. Truth is what works. Not truth is what's right, but truth is just what works.
Okay. Would mathematics be part of that? Because 2 + 2 always equals 4 to every one of us.
Yes and no. Most math, yes, but then you get into the world of quantum physics, and there are certain phenomena with math that, like, 1 times 0 equals 0. So if you have physical matter and this is kind of a weird off, not related, but and most people would never think of this unless you're in quantum physics or you happen to watch a video like I did.
Okay.
If you have matter, right, and you're trying to explain something in the natural world or the universe, right, you have matter, and then you multiply it by nothing. Mathematics would say you got 0. 1 times 0 is 0. Well, where did that thing go? Right. So it's like it just ceased to exist. So with materialistic, I forget what they call it. I think it's Aristotle's phenomenon or something like. Oh no, that's another phenomenon with circles and lines. I forget what they call it. They can do the same thing with 1 times 1. So you have 2 different objects. 1 times 1. In mathematics, it says it's 1. But in quantum physics and the material world, 1 times 1, well, it says it's just 1, but there was 2 to start with, so where's the other one? What happened to it? But it's the idea is kind of goofy because they're applying mathematics to physical objects, because math isn't physical, but it's how they, when trying to calculate like black holes and all that advanced stuff, that's kind of where that comes into play. Normally math is just it's all mental arithmetic and just what's the word for it? Johnny should be here.
No, you're doing good. You're doing good. I'm writing notes.
So you can join us?
Oh no. I need to go get a birthday present for Cora.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you want to just do that after.
Yeah, we need to go sample club. We'll do some other stuff too.
Okay.
And go to the grocery store. So we gotta book it pretty quick.
Then we can do Walmart since we need to go to the grocery store.
This is my wife, Chantal.
She
you
was at
recording?
the retreat.
I was.
Yep.
Yes.
And you were serving last night at the brunch.
I was. Yes. I helped plan that. Where's my phone?
I have no idea.
I could have sworn I left it in here.
I hope so.
Oh no, it's right here.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I don't know, you're fine.
So back to what you were talking about. I didn't mean to get you off on pragmatism.
Oh no.
What's Darwinian logic? What?
Yes, I'm just actually gonna kind of just read through it. Do we reject the idea that there is any transcendent element in human nature? Is there anything outside of ourselves?
Okay.
Typically defined in terms of mind, soul, or spirit, capable of knowing a transcendent truth or moral order. Instead, he treats humans as mere organisms adapting to challenges in the environment. In his educational theory, learning is just another form of adaptation, a kind of mental natural selection. Ideas evolve as tools for survival, no different from the evolution of the lion's teeth or the eagle's claw. So the next paragraph. In the new evolutionary logic, this is what Dewey created or came up with. New logic for application to mind and morals in life. So in this evolutionary logic, ideas are not judged by the transcendent standard of truth, but how they work in getting us what we want. So are they useful? Ideas do not reflect reality, but only serve human interests. So before that, theory of knowledge was based on biblical doctrine or the image of God. Confidence in the reliability of human knowledge derived from the conviction that finite human reasons reflect, to some degree at least, an infinite divine reason. Since the same God who created the universe also created our minds, we can be confident that our mental capabilities reflect the structure of the universe. So that was the traditional. But Western societies, we've drifted from that. So Edward Craig talks about even as Western thinkers began to move away from the Orthodox Christian theology, their philosophies, and most of them still retain the conception that our minds reflect an absolute mind as the basis for trust in human cognition. So the way we think as humans and culture and how it acts and the way we think about thinking, the way we think about truth and morals and relate, like the groundwork for all of that, right? Philosophy plays a big part in that. So they're saying that how it's been forever is based off either religion or creator or thought, and we can trust our minds because we believe our minds were created. So, but yet even these people who are believing in Darwinian evolution and they talk about Western, because you have every country in the world or every area, if you were to go to the Middle East, the way they think is just completely different. Even if they spoke English, it's not a language thing. It's a worldview. It's a culture. Just the way they even comprehend different types of things is different. So if we were trying to give them the gospel, they would view it differently. They wouldn't grasp the message from the gospel that we grasp from the gospel. And that's a whole nother topic. But so the way we think as a culture is underlined by a lot of things, but philosophy is one of them. So it'll make more sense.
So when he says ideas do not reflect reality but only serve human interests, is that getting back to the fact that do not reflect reality? I wasn't sure what he meant by that.
I think the best example just made me think of, you ever seen people that go, they say 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4?
So
there's people out there who say that, and I've seen them. And they got interviewed on TV, and they're like, "That's racist."
what?
Yeah, they sound like cuckoo, but it's like, what do you? Their truth, what they think, doesn't reflect reality.
So somebody might say 2 + 2 = 3, 2 + 2 = 7.
Yep.
So then that would not be pragmatic then?
That would be truth it works for them.
It works for them.
Right.
Whether it works for us doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay.
And they end up being the dominant species for some reason, then that would be the truth going forward.
Okay.
Because their truths are not based in something outside themselves. They make it up, basically.
Okay.
So now there's all kinds of implications that come from that if there's no absolute truth. And you think that out and follow it through, logically, it has lots of implications. So the pragmatists, good grief. Pragmatists were among the first, however, to face squarely the implications of naturalistic evolution. If evolutionary forces produce the mind, they said, then all beliefs and convictions are nothing but mental survival strategies, to be judged in terms of their practical success in human conduct. William James likes to say that truth is the cash value of an idea. If it pays off, then we call it true. So that ends that section on Darwinian logic. That beliefs and convictions aren't actually true, basically is what they're saying. They're just mental survival strategies. It's what worked to get them through life. It seems strange, but that's what they're saying.
Well, could you take that, though, to the creationist point of view, that they're saying if it pays off, it's true, where we could say murder's wrong, and that would be true because it pays off.
But does it? There could be times when you need to or certain cultures just wiped out other cultures because they were battling them and they didn't want any competition. And so now they're thriving because they're not competing anymore, but they just murdered a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
So the pragmatism and Darwinian logic, that was good, true, because it worked, killed them.
That's what happened in the Old Testament. The Jews did that quite a few times.
Well, they didn't just do it just to do it. That's often applied that God in the Old Testament's just a evil God, and he promotes killing and death and raping a woman, but none of that's true at all. It's all taken out of context. God had told them after warning them and warning the Israelites and the other whoever it be at the time. I mean, there's going to be wars, but they didn't just kill them to kill them. There was reasons behind it, and just like it, that'd be a whole other topic to go
I'm
through.
sorry.
But underlying all of that, is it okay to kill them just because it benefits us, or is killing wrong? Like if I wanted what somebody had, I just go over there and kill them and take it. That worked for me. What they're saying is, my truth is my truth. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to kill that person and go take all their stuff because it worked for me. But what belief in intelligent design and believers think is completely opposite. It doesn't matter. Murdering is wrong, period.
Mm-hmm.
That's a moral that's outside of ourselves that can just change with culture. It's outside of us. We don't make that up. It's not subjective. So that part, Darwinian logic is right there. There is no moral absolute. There's no transcendent. There's nothing outside of us. We don't have souls, and if it works, then it's true.
Okay.
Kind of seems empty and cold, but that's the logic. Is that before we move on, does that part make sense?
Kind of it does.
Okay.
This is difficult for me.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this one a bit different. It's a great one for Chantal to jump in on for the first one. Or one of the more difficult ones in here. No, you don't have to. I'm just teasing.
I'm listening.
No, I'm not expecting you to. You didn't even read this book. No, yeah, no.
But I am listening to you guys.
So pragmatism today. This Darwinian logic continues to shape American thought more than we might imagine. Take religion. William James was raised in a household with an intense interest in religion. As a result, James applied his philosophy of pragmatism to religion. We decided whether God exists depending on whether that belief has positive consequences in our experience. An idea is, quote, true so long as to believe it is profitable for our lives. James once said, thus, if theological ideas should do this, if the notion of God in particular should prove to do it, how could pragmatism possibly deny God's existence? So, here William James is basing his faith in God off of, well, it worked. Well, that wouldn't work for other people, because there's other people who, because we have free will and bad things happen and there's evil in the world that get murdered, and we see it in the Bible. If we look at all the martyrs and some apostles were cut in half and beheaded and hung upside down, did it work out for them? No. Is that proof that God doesn't exist? According to them, yes, but we would say no. God has reasons for allowing different things to happen. So this is their idea of pragmatism is purely based off, well, does it work? Is it good for me? So like if I say, you pick any topic, I'm just going to eat and eat and eat and eat because it's good for me. I like to eat, it makes me feel good. So it's good for me. It's true. Eating as much as you can as you possibly can is true. And it's good for you. because it worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
But is that true?
No.
Well, no. But that's what they're leading into is, well, if it works for you, it's practical for you. It worked for you, so it must be true. That's just because something's true for one person in one particular case that it happened doesn't mean it's always going to happen that way. So to base a truth off singular events instead of something outside of yourself, outside of us, is a faulty way of looking at truth. The idea, the whole meaning of truth is something that's it's the way we understand it, right? As truth is something that's you can't change the truth. The truth is truth.
Mm-hmm.
So, in this thought process, truth can change. So once something was true, now can maybe not be true because it stopped working out. So it says, let's visit this quote. He said, if theological ideas should do this, if the notion of God in particular should prove to do it, how could pragmatism possibly deny God's existence? Lost my thought on that one. The same thought can be if agnostics or atheists were to look at, they look at nature and because science, right, is something that's repeatable. The traditional explanation of scientific theory is a process that's repeatable and testable.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it, the results. Well, the Big Bang, evolution, the thoughts behind that, even the thought of, oh, it has to be testable and repeatable, that's not a test and that's not repeatable. That's a thought process. That's a quote. That's a saying. It's a line of, or a way of doing something. That's philosophical and purely in its nature. So to say, well, science is something that's testable and repeatable and observable, that statement in and of itself isn't science. It's philosophical. Does that make sense?
So they're saying the process, as they define it, is something that they have made up. Because it makes sense to me that science is repeatable and testable and observable.
Right. So they go, well, if it's testable and repeatable and observable, then it's factual. We know it's true, right? That's science in a broad term. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who said that it has to be testable, repeatable, and observable for it to be true? That's man-made. That's a philosophical statement.
Okay.
But then they will try to they'll look at in the sciences, evolution, the Big Bang, and all this stuff that's not observable, not testable, or nor repeatable, and say it's scientific. Some even call it scientific fact. You could say, oh, it's a theory, and they go, everybody believes it's theory, or they call it theory, but they believe it's fact. Everybody knows it's fact now. The evolutionary theory, it's fact, and it's like, then why is it called a theory? But those aren't repeatable. You can't test them. So to believe in those, you're philosophically, mentally believing in those. It cannot be proved. So you have to believe that it was true. You have to believe the Big Bang. You have to believe evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's certain things we've seen, like the red shift and fossils, that give some evidences for some things. That doesn't necessarily mean we evolved, or at least macroevolution.
What is redshift?
So redshift is how one of the early, or I think it's the first way they found out about the Big Bang. So the shift, they're measuring the red wavelength of light among stars, and they're able to tell that it was either fading, the red light fades in time, I forget the exact details, but they're able to tell that at some point it was started, and then now it's expanding. The universe is expanding,
Mm-hmm.
and so they could tell they were able to tell it's expanding by the red shift in light that they could observe.
Okay.
And so if it's expanding, then it all had to have a common point.
Yeah.
So that's what they call the Big Bang. So that's what that is. So, but what they don't know is there's this point. Where did it come from? What was that point? And every action has a reaction. So if there was a bang, well, what caused the bang?
And what caused all the matter that came out of that?
Right. And now the thought is, well, it just came out of nothing. Everything came out of nothing. Which that thought is just astronomically just hard to grasp, because I don't think it's graspable. Something cannot come out of nothing. There's nothing to come into nothing. And they're like, oh, well, it's quantum physics. You don't understand quantum physics. It's like, so they're taking the argument from, what do they call that? Authority, or, well, you're not a quantum physicist, so you just, you can't explain it, and you won't ever understand it. It's like, well, no, that's a philosophical concept. Can something come from nothing? No.
So what they're saying, I know this isn't part of what we're talking about right now, but what they're saying is not only did the Big Bang somehow have all of that material come out of it, but that Big Bang had to, in and of itself, appear out of nowhere.
Yes.
Because otherwise they're talking infinity. I mean, where did the Big Bang come from?
Right. And there's lots of, if you dig into that further, there's other implications. So you need time, space, and matter. So you need time, when did it happen? You need space, where did it happen? And matter is what it is. You need all of those. You need a place, a time, and the material all at once. They're saying it just all of that just came into existence all by itself.
I have a hard time thinking that an intelligent person believes that. And I'm not trying to come from a Christian perspective. I'm just trying to talk about it logically.
Yep.
How does somebody accept that?
That's where the naturalism comes in.
And the naturalism was where they don't explain it by anything except naturalistic means and methods. They wouldn't accept anything that was supernatural or considered a miracle. So I wonder how they do accept the Big Bang, because that would basically be supernatural in and of itself by definition.
Because if they, and I think, because that's a very good question, how does someone that smart, because there's very smart people, think that I'll just, that's their faith, that's their belief. They can't prove it, so they have to believe it. So for them to a lot of them will downplay and like we read in the beginning of the chapter, they were picketing these people who believe in intelligent design, and often they get criticized that, well, you're just dumb, and it's like they're not thinking it through. It's look at your own thought process. This stuff just came into, like, you have a faith, you have a belief.
Mm-hmm.
So to say that one is better than the other, their own thought process, if they say, well, there is no moral truth, there's no absolute truth, and truth is just what works. Well, this works for us, so my truth is true, so how can you say my truth is wrong? Their own explanation of it undercuts themselves. It's not rational. But, yeah, that's a good question. And because they don't know, so they just believe it. It leads to, I think they may even mention it. We'll see. If they do admit or even go with the thought that there may be a God, that has consequences. That there is a God, And if it is, say, the Christian God or any other God, then is there heaven? Is there hell? Are we responsible for our actions? Right? That leads into all of that. And then now people want to, like, all throughout time, people want to do what they want to do, and they want to be their own gods per se. They don't want to be told what to do and how to live life. And they don't want to be responsible for their actions. So if they can, quote, prove that there is no God, and they can't, but they say all this stuff, and ignore the glaring big holes and gaps in their thought process and in their way of thinking. They can prove there's no God, and then they can do what they want, and everything's good. And my truth, your truth, your truth. I'm just do whatever I want, and I don't take responsibility for my actions. But if there is God, then that leaves the implications for that are right. You know, we'll just talk about Christian God, right? There's heaven, there's a hell, and right, we got to be responsible for our actions. And I think a lot of people, for what it seems like, that's the holdup.
That there are consequences to what they do in their life.
Yeah, and it's strange because all these people live their life as if there's morals and laws, and we can't break the rules, we can't break the laws because that's bad. Yet, where's their truth come from if they don't believe in God or a creator of some kind? What's your truth true? Who's to say it's actually bad? For them, it's just, well, it works. And we see that, like now we look at slavery and we go, that's bad. Well, 200 years ago, slavery wasn't bad.
To a certain segment of population.
Correct. So as society changes, there's always going to be that, because not everybody believes in God or gods, or has a faith or a belief. So their truths are pragmatic. Whether I don't think that term was around then, but it's the same thought process. If there's no transcendent, overarching authority or God telling us it's true, then it's just up to us to make up what's true.
Okay.
So yeah, when I think I might have played it, or I might have quoted it. Ravi Zacharias gets asked a question by an atheist about morals and why evil exists, and he tells him, or he asks him, he's like, well, what's evil? And so they try to explain evil. It's like, well, if there's no God or nothing outside of us making these moral judgments or telling us that this is good and that's bad, then nothing is good and or bad. It's just what we make of it. So your question is self-defeating. Why does a God allow evil? Well, there is no God, and there's not evil. But if there is a God, then there is evil and there is good, because he's the one who says and puts on our heart what's good and what's bad.
That's a good response.
Yeah. So the question is just self-defeating. This next part here. Does this sound familiar? A great many Americans today choose their religion based on what meets their needs, or affirms them, or helps them cope more effectively with personal issues, from losing weight to building a better marriage. So often people just come to get, well, what's good for me? What can I get out of it? How can I get the life I want? And it's what God wants for our life. Right? Our lives are to be a living sacrifice. It says that's God's looking for true worshipers in spirit and truth. And as our life, in Romans 12, they actually quoted this morning, which is good. Our bodies, our lives are a living sacrifice of worship. The way we live our life from it, we give everything to God. And just how we live, everything, right? From day to day, everything we do should be honoring God, giving glory to God. It's not our lives and what we want for our lives. It's what He made us for worship. So if we're twisting that around and going, oh, what can I get out of church? Well, that's not the point of church. Church is building up with the saints, and you have congregational worship, and we're worshiping God and praising with song and praise is a type of worship. And this is where we get the opportunity to do it together and have a community together to help each other out, to care for each other, and for the building up of the saints so we can go out and talk and be empowered by the Spirit to go talk about Jesus. But too often people just go to church because it makes them feel good, or what can they get out of it? And that's what they're talking about here, because it's practical. He says, I was recently chatting with a Christian who was very active in a church. But when the topic turned to a mutual friend who was not a believer, her response was, well, whatever works for you. Of course, there's a great problem with choosing religion according to whatever works for you. I mean that we cannot know whether it is really true or just a projection of our own needs. So we hear that so often. Well, whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's that actually mean? That's a product of Darwinian logic and pragmatism. Whatever works for you. Because truth is just whatever works for you. And that was, I think, a good example. Does that help kind of wrap that thought?
Mm-hmm.
So a couple paragraphs down. Virtually across the curriculum, from math class to moral education, teachers are trained to be non-directive, quote, facilitators, presenting students with problems and allowing them to work out their own pragmatic strategies for solving them. Of course, good teachers have always taught students to think for themselves, but today's non-directive methodologies go far beyond that. They spring from a Darwinian epistemology, or theory of knowledge, that denies the very existence of any objective or transcendent truth. So take, for example, constructivism, a popular trend in education today. Few realize that it's based on the idea that truth is nothing more than a social construction for solving problems. A leading theorist of constructivism, Ernest von Glassfeld at the University of Georgia, is forthright about Darwinian roots. He says, the function of cognition is adaptive in the biological sense. He writes, this means that to know is not to possess true representations of reality, but rather to possess ways and means of acting and thinking that allow one to attain the goals one happens to choose. In short, our Darwinian epistemology implies that ideas are merely tools for meeting human goals.
And epistemology is the study of truth or the study of knowledge?
And knowledge.
Got it.
How are we at on time?
It's 11:40.
Time's finishing up.
11:45, I think.
Okay. Let's skip through some of this one. Oh, this is good. So postmodern campuses, I'm going to go to the second to last paragraph. He says, I was presented this progression from Darwinianism to postmodern pragmatism at a Christian college when a man in the audience raised his hand. I have only one question. These guys who think that all of our ideas and beliefs evolved, do they think their own ideas evolved? The audience broke into delighted applause, because of course he had captured the key fallacy of the Darwinian approach to knowledge. If all ideas are products of evolution, and thus not really true, but only useful for survival, then evolution itself is not true either, and why should the rest of us pay any attention to it?
See, I didn't follow that. How does that, if they're all products of evolution, then how does that say that evolution is not true?
So they're making a truth statement, and they're saying, this is true, this is how thinking and epistemology and how the brain works, and truth and morals and life, this is how it works. This is the truth. We're telling you, we're trying to tell you, this is it. This is the truth. This is how it works.
Okay.
Our brains evolved, and our thoughts evolved, and morals evolved. That's the truth. So they're making a truth statement.
Okay.
But if truth can change, well, then you can't make a truth statement if the truth's not true. How do they know their truth is true if the truth is always changing? That's the fallacy, because truth, as we believe it, never changes. Truth comes from outside of us. We don't create it. It doesn't evolve. It doesn't change. So they're saying that, oh, well, truth, it evolves.
And another word for truth would be morals, because truth also, when they believed the world was flat and then realized it was round, truth evolved there, but that was scientific truth. So scientific truth can evolve, but morals don't evolve. Morals are what we would call from a creator, and they are what they are.
They're very closely related. They're not the same, but they're very closely related. They believe that morals did evolve. We believe they didn't evolve.
Yeah.
They believe, well, it was useful for cavemen and apes to learn to work together, so they weren't competing and starving and fighting against food and whatever it may be. So that's their explanation of how morals evolved. It was useful, right? That's that pragmatism, the Darwinian logic. That just explains that they now understand consequences in good and bad. That doesn't explain where they came from. Well, why is it good and bad? So I'm going to go back up a paragraph actually. It says, according to traditional common sense approach to knowledge, our ideas are true when they represent or correspond to a reality. But according to Darwinian epistemology, the study of knowledge, ideas are nothing but tools that have evolved to help us control and manipulate the environment. As Rorty puts it, our theories have no more a representational relation to an intrinsic nature of things than does the anteater's snout or the bowbird's skill at weaving. Thus, we evaluate an idea that's the same way the natural selection preserves the snout and the weaving instinct, not by asking how well it represents objective reality, but only how well it works. So objective reality, remember from we had that one chapter on, wasn't this? In one of our chapters. So yeah, subjective and objective truths or realities. You remember what the terms?
I remember hearing them, but I'm sitting here writing it down because I don't remember.
So there's subjective, right? It's subject to that person or event or time. So Chantal has an ice cream cone, and she says that she has a strawberry ice cream cone. She says this is the best ice cream flavor ever. And I have one that's vanilla, and I say it's the best ice cream ever. Those truth claims are subjective to each and one of us. They're personal.
Okay.
It's kind of what they're explaining here is the Darwinian logic, the pragmatic, well, it works for me, this is what I like, I think it's the best. Whereas an objective truth to that would be, this ice cream is cold. Or it's made up of, this is an ice cream cone, we're both holding an ice cream cone. It's something that can't be changed. that's objectively true about the object or the thing that you're talking about. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
And we see that today in transgenderism and that whole, all that stuff. Right, you got the term sex and gender at one point in time were one and the same. And you go to other parts of the world and you ask them that question, they're like, but they're the same. I had recently watched a video where they go ask someone, and they couldn't understand and grapple with what America's seeing with all this transgender stuff. They're all, how many genders are there? He's like, well, 2. And here there's an unlimited amount. And if you go to the doctor and something's wrong with you, they're going to ask you male or female, so they know how to treat you. So they've split gender from sex or reality, and it's now whatever you want it to be. You could be a dog or different color or whatever you want to be, because it works for them. It's not based in reality, but based in their feelings and what works for them.
So that'd be subjective truth.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Subjective or relativistic. So indeed, the theory undercuts itself. For if evolution is true, then it is not true, but only useful. This kind of internal contradiction is fatal, for a theory that asserts something and denies it at the same time is simply nonsense. In short, naturalistic evolution is self-refuting. Well, I guess we'll finish this one. I don't know if we're going to get the other one. Clash of worldviews. Now this is a good one. Yeah, the media paints the evolution controversy in terms of science versus religion, but it's much more accurate to say it is worldview versus worldview, and philosophy versus philosophy. Making the point levels the playing field and opens the door to serious dialogue. So Michael Roos made a famous admission at the 1993 Symposium of American Association for the Advancement of Science. His quote here is, "Evolution as a scientific theory makes a commitment to a kind of naturalism." Right, that it can only be explained by nature, in nature with naturalistic means and processes. He said that is, it's a philosophy because they can't prove that. It's something that they made up in their minds and their brains that, well, it has to be explained this way. We can't even fathom or accept, even talk about any other explanation outside nature.
Okay.
Right? So that's a philosophy, that's a belief, a mindset, right? And that is, it's a philosophy, not just facts. He went on, evolution, akin to religion, involves making certain a priori or metaphysical assumptions, which at some level cannot be proven empirically. Right, so these assumptions, these beliefs they have, you can't prove that. You can't prove that everything came into existence by natural means. You can't prove that. That's an assumption. That's a belief. They're calling it a religion, which it is. They live their life. They do everything according to that worldview, according to that thought. As do Christians, we live our lives according to our worldview. We live our lives and do everything according to what we believe. They're doing the same thing, they just don't call it religion, but that's literally what they're doing. So Roos's colleagues responded with shocked silence, and afterward one of them, Arthur Shapiro, wrote, "Did Michael Roos give away the store?" But ironically, in the process, Shapiro himself conceded that there is an irreducible core of ideological assumptions underlying science. So that in science, these people doing science, they have these underlying assumptions, beliefs, right? So they're self-admitting here now that they're doing science based off of these assumptions, which they're irreducibly, and you can't prove them, so they're not true. So then again, it's a belief. Even on Darwinism is a philosophical preference. If by that we mean we choose to discuss the material universe in terms of material processes accessible by material operations. It is this worldview dimension that makes the debate over Darwinian versus intelligent design so important. Every system of thought starts with a creation account that offers an answer to the fundamental question, where did everything come from? That crucial starting point shapes everything that follows. Today, a naturalistic approach to knowledge is being applied to virtually every field. Some say that we're entering an age of universal Darwinism, where it is no longer just a scientific theory, but a comprehensive worldview. It has become commonplace to say that America is embroiled in a culture war over conflicting moral standards. But we must remember that morality is always derivative, meaning stemming from an underlying worldview. The culture war reflects an underlying cognitive war over worldviews, and at the core of each worldview is an account of origins.
Well, this chapter makes more sense going through it like that.
Well, good. I'm glad. That was a tougher one.
It was.
And it's so true with that last paragraph, the last two. The way people live and act and how culture functions is a product directly related to what they believe and think. If there is no God and there's no morals, then I can do whatever I want, and that's eventually will fall and fail. That's what happened in the Roman Empire. Right? We see their morals got loose, and they're doing whatever they wanted, and then it eventually crumbled. And then a lot of people think that's what's going to happen with America. We'll see, but that's another topic.
Yeah.
As far as evidence for God,
I will be gone next week,
okay.
the last week, because I'm going to that wedding in Texas.